Hello, AFCM family. This is Mike Cogley coming to you today for your Friday inspiration. Together with my wife Mary, we live in Washington, Pennsylvania, and I am an evangelist. We've been doing this for over 40 years. I've pastored some during that time, but basically our ministry has been that of an evangelist. It's so wonderful to be able to be with you today. I so much appreciate the invitation to share with you from my heart. And I pray that things are going well with you, and I pray that this program today will be a blessing to you. Today I want to talk about focus, about doing what God's called us to do and the challenges that we experience as we are doing the work that God has called us to do. You know, when I look at the Gospel of Mark, the 8th chapter, we read the story of Jesus feeding 4,000 people with just a few resources. We also know that Jesus fed over 5,000 people. Again, the stories are very parallel, but there are some lessons here that can really speak well to us today. And we are so blessed that we have the opportunity to serve God in the arena of faith. We see God do the impossible. Everybody that's listening has experienced the miraculous power of God, have seen the seemingly impossible become a reality. And yet, sometimes we forget about the things that God has done for us when we are challenged with great struggles. And sometimes God speaks to us and calls us to do things that seem to be completely out of our reach. And we get through these things by simply keeping our focus on who God is. We are so concerned oftentimes with the how or the what. You know, that's what happened when Jesus told the disciples to feed the multitude. They said, well, how are we going to do this? It's impossible. We've only got just a few small resources. But you know, God never calls us to do the possible. He always calls us to do the impossible. And as we are moving forward in whatever God has called us to do, we are living in an exciting time. We are living at a time with challenges that we've never seen before. We couldn't even have dreamt 2 years ago what was facing us. I mean, churches being shut down with COVID and all kind of crazy things have been going on in our world. We understand that Jesus is preparing his bride to come, and I thank God that he is calling us and getting us ready. But we've got a work to do, and I am so excited about what God is doing. But it's going to require people that are willing to believe God for the impossible, to be focused on what God has called us to do. So there are a couple of things I just want to say today. You know, God speaks to us so many times about doing the impossible, and what we look at is, how can this be done? How can we do this? When I pastored and God called us to go to a different building, a building that would help us to fulfill the vision that God had given us, the first question was, Lord, how can we do this? What are we going to do this with? And yet we prayed and we believed God, and God just put it together. You know, the world today needs to see you and I set an example of staying in the faith and believing God and letting the miraculous just become a part of what we do every day. I know a year ago, God began to deal with my heart about expanding our ministry. I mean, when COVID hit, revival stopped. We weren't going to churches to preach anymore. So we began to do online things, so just like many of you have, and we were stretched. And I remember just, Lord, how am I going to do my Bible study? So I bought an iPhone and I started doing that on the phone. And we've been growing that. And then the Lord spoke to me. And never forget, back in February, the Lord said, I want you to go on television. And my first question was, Lord, how is this going to happen? My wife had lost her job because of, everything just went crazy. She was unemployed. We had no income. And now, Lord, you're calling us to step out and to go into and not just a local station. We had been doing some local broadcast with a Christian TV station in Ohio, but God opened the door and said, I want you to go international. And I said, Lord, how? We have no money. I don't have the equipment. Every obstacle that I could think of to not do it was smacked me right in the face, and they kept talking to me. But yet I heard God say, I've called you. I'm your source. Don't worry about it. So we just stepped out in faith. And I'll never forget the day. It happened really quickly. I made some phone calls, came out of the office, and I told my wife, I said, Mary, we now have an international broadcast. And she just looked at me and said, okay. And one thing led to another, and brothers and sisters, we've had that opportunity, and today our ministry is touching 84 countries around the world, and I thank God for that. But how did that happen? How did that happen? It wasn't because I had the resources, but I know where my resources come from. And I want to encourage you today, in these remaining few seconds that we have, to keep your focus on the Lord. No matter how difficult things get, no matter how challenging things may be and how impossible things may look, keep your focus on the who. Don't get focused on the why. Don't get focused on the how, but stay focused on the who. The I am that I am has called us, just as he called Moses. He's called us, and he will provide for us. And I know I'm preaching to the choir today, but sometimes we need to be reminded of this. Sometimes we need to be encouraged with the fact that, Jesus is still on the throne. He is still God who is more than enough. He is still Jehovah Jireh. He knows what we need before we even need it, and he's already made provision for that. Isn't that a wonderful truth today? I want to encourage you today. Maybe you're in a hard spot. Know that we pray for you. We pray for our AFCM family. We know that God is doing wonderful things, and God has placed us here for such a time as this. But only as we keep our focus on him will we be able to do what he's called us to do. Be encouraged that nothing is impossible with God. We serve a God of miracles. Keep your focus on him. And brothers and sisters, know that we love you, we pray for you, and I trust his word encouraged you today. Go with God, and he'll go with you. Bye now.